Welcome to Across the Desk, where we discuss entrepreneurship, small business, and everything in between. Hi, it's Elizabeth Plouffe, and welcome to Across the Desk. And today is Wise Word Wednesdays, although it is Monday, so maybe I need to change that name. What this is more about is my little fetish for reading. And today is Daniel H. Pink's Drive. And love this book. It was really terrific. And it's actually really helping me reestablish some business goals and really think about what I'm trying to achieve in my business. I think everybody goes through that phase when you're at about the 2.5-year mark where you're like, am I headed in the way I want to be headed? Well, I shouldn't say that. For some people, this happens. And for me, it's happening right now. And I'm really in a terrific position. We've just launched Making Shift Happen with Ballsy Women in Business, which is the entrepreneurship group for women that I run with a terrific team. And it's also through reading resources like Daniel Pink's book that is really helping me use the tools that I have to take my business in a terrific direction. So one of the things I love to do, I have to put the glasses on, is read you some excerpts from the book. I really like this. One of the things that I do when I'm really enjoying a book is I put stickies in specifically so that I can remember to read certain parts out when I'm doing my podcast, and because they mean something to me. They've triggered an aha moment, or they've done whatever. So if you have that too, I'd love to hear about what you do with your books. I'm a little bit of a sticky fanatic. So what he talks about in here are the extrinsic and intrinsic motivators that people use to drive business and business decisions. And specifically, are they value-based? Are you fighting against your intrinsic motivators? What happens when you take a hobby or a passion that is intrinsically motivated, which means it's driven from within. It's something that you're born to do. It's something that you're meant to do. For me, it's teaching and collaborating. For other people, it's creating art. For others, it's, singing. For others, it's creating new technology. It's just something that you have to do. But for sometimes, people try and take a hobby or a passion that's intrinsically motivated, and they try and turn it into a career. And what Daniel Pink hypothesizes is that the second you put those kinds of constraints around a hobby or a passion, it sort of kills the drive to do it. And that can be, I shouldn't say just hobby or passion. That can be volunteering. That can be any kind of activity. And I know that for myself. A few years ago, I got very into cake decorating and did beautiful, if I say so myself, a beautiful job with fondant and gum paste and decoration and custom gorgeous cakes that people really loved, and got a terrific bit of an ego boost out of it because it is a skill that is not common for everybody. But what killed it for me was when I tried to turn it into a business. When I was just doing it, sorry, I'm not reading, so I still have my glasses on. When I was just doing it for fun and for my kids, and then later on my friends' kids and what have you, I really enjoyed it because I could be as creative as I wanted and there was no constraint. And the second I decided to turn it into a side business, the problem began with cake specifically being a want, not a need. It is something that people think they have to have at a celebration. It's what we as a community or as a society, North America anyway, automatically attribute. If you're having a birthday, you're having a wedding, you're having an anniversary, you're having anything, you need to have a cake, right? So need is a relative term. It's cake. It's a disposable. And if you don't bake and you don't create these fancy cakes, then you really have no idea how much time and energy and skill goes into creating each creation. And a friend of mine, she made a terrific point, which maybe that was the downfall. I don't know. But she said, how do you feel about people eating your art? You never see it again, obviously, except in photos. And so my response to that was I got such joy out of creating it that I didn't worry about it. And then it launched into trying to get paid for it. And part of it could have been me doubting my own skill. But part of it is people are used to buying, here in Burlington, we have Fortinos. They're used to buying $15 sheet cakes, which they don't realize is a gross package mix and vegetable shortening icing and tons of, icky food coloring and fake ingredients and whatever. And they think that my cakes are the same. They think that it's a box mix and box icing and, junky whatever, not realizing that I made everything from scratch. Cakes were from scratch. Icing was from scratch. I even made my own fondant to make sure I minimized the chemicals in it, all kinds of stuff. And sort of the breaking point for me was when somebody had requested a custom-made cake to celebrate the arrival for twins. And it had a lot of intricate fondant work and what have you, the design that she sent me anyway. And she wanted to pay me $15. And I recognized that that wasn't a malicious offer. I recognized that that was just their understanding of the market and their experience with cake up until that point. But it really pissed me off. And that was sort of the beginning of the end. After that, I just accepted the $40 for the cakes and did whatever I wanted anyway, and figured the $40 was enough to basically cover maybe some of the materials, none of my time. And that's when I stopped. I still do them periodically for family, and I still do them periodically for friends. It has been a while, but trying to go against my intrinsic motivator of just loving the creative process and put a constraint of money around it really just killed it for me. And so that was what I got out of this book, is understanding what that motivator is and understanding that in the business world, we're still operating in large part under the industrial age model of carrot and stick, where you have an if-and situation where, if you perform, if you reach this goal, then yay, we're going to give you a bonus, and yay, you're going to, whatever. And for a lot of society now, that's not enough. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love money. I loved being able to take my family on vacation this summer. I love being able to treat my family to things and sporting one of my glam jewels. And that's my little treat for myself. Beautiful necklace that my friend Monica Graves makes. And her business, Glam Jewels, go check it out, because I'm telling you, it will change your life for jewelry. So anyway, I'm just going to read you a few excerpts here, and I have a couple that are starred, but we're going to start here. The Motivation 2.0 operating system has endured for a very long time, and that's the carrot and stick thing. Indeed, it is so deeply embedded in our lives that most of us scarcely recognize that it exists. For as long as any of us can remember, we've configured our organizations and constructed our lives around its bedrock assumption. The way to improve performance, increase productivity, and encourage excellence is to reward the good and punish the bad, which is why I work for myself now, because I treat myself really nice. I treat myself how I would wish a manager would treat me, which is I allow for mistakes and experimentation and ideas, and I don't freak out if those things don't work out. So he goes on and he discusses a variety of things. I think I'm going to jump to a couple of the hot points here. Heuristic challenges. So we'll move on from that. Sorry. So tons of great things. If you're looking to figure out what motivates you and why, and beyond Simon Sinek's why, then this is a terrific book to take up. And one of the examples that he gives is what drives people to solve challenges. And I love solving problems. I love strategizing and creating solutions. And part of it is ego-driven, because I hear consistently, we never thought about it that way, and that's great, and let's go with it. And that's not really tooting my own horn. That's just that's an intrinsic motivator for me. And I happen to be good at it, so rah-rah. So here we go. Something similar seems to occur for challenges that aren't so much about cracking an existing problem, but iterating something new. Teresa Amabile, the Harvard School of Business professor and one of the world's leading researchers on creativity, has frequently tested the effects of contingent rewards on the creative process. So this is what I was talking about before. In one study, she and two colleagues recruited 23 professional artists from the United States who had produced both commissioned and non-commissioned artwork. They asked the artists to randomly select 10 commissioned works and 10 non-commissioned works. Then Amabile and her team gave the works to a panel of accomplished artists and curators who knew nothing about the study and asked the experts to rate the pieces on creativity and technical skill. Our results were quite startling, the researchers wrote. The commissioned works were rated as significantly less creative than the non-commissioned works. Yet they were not rated as different in technical quality. Moreover, the artists reported feeling significantly more constrained when doing a commissioned work than when doing non-commissioned works, which is obvious, but it's a pain in the ass when you're a creative person and you really have to tie things back in order to keep somebody happy. One artist whom they interviewed described the Sawyer effect in action. Not always, but a lot of the time when you are doing a piece for someone else, it becomes more work than joy. When I work for myself, there is the pure joy of creating. And I can work through the night and not even know it. On a commission piece, you have to check yourself. Be careful to do what the client wants. And this is true for anybody in a creative profession. So, I do communications and social media strategy and communication strategy and all kinds of stuff. And when I do it for myself, I have myself to answer to, so I can be as creative as I want, which is what I used to tell my girl guides, which is another story. But of course, when I'm working for a client, I have to be conscious of their brand and their needs and respect that and their budget and respect the constraints. So here's one of the other things, players or pawns. This was so cool, and I put a star on it, so I'm going to it's all about management. Think about management for a moment, both the word and the very notion. Where did it come from? Somehow we assume that management is like the ocean, that for our purposes, it's always been here. But take a step back and think again. Management didn't emanate from nature. It wasn't handed to us from God. It's something that somebody invented. It is, as the strategy guru Gary Hamel had observed, a technology, and an 1850s technology at that. Now look around your office or home. How many 19th century technologies are you still using? Sure, some companies have oiled management's gears, and others have sanded off its rough edges, but at its core, this technology hasn't changed much in more than 100 years. Scary! Its paramount goal remains compliance, its central ethic remains control, and its chief tools remain extrinsic motivators. That leaves it largely out of sync with the non-routine right-brain abilities on which many of the world's economies now depend. But could its most glaring weaknesses run deeper? Is management, as it's currently constituted, out of sync with human nature itself? So true. So true. I have been that problem employee my entire life because I don't think like everybody else. And I don't mean that in a woohoo, look at me kind of way. But I just perceive things differently and act differently. And I have little patience for processes that don't make sense. So my poor managers have had to be very patient because I just don't think the way they do. So the idea of management, that is management of people rather than management of, say, supply chains, is built on certain assumptions about the basic natures of those being managed. It presumes that to take action or move forward, we need a prod, that absent a reward or punishment, we'd remain happily and inertly in place. It also presumes that once people do get moving, they need direction, that without a firm and reliable guide, they'd wander. And this was the other tenet of this book, was that managers should look more to intrinsic motivation and step away from the carrot and stick mentality, because you are more likely to get quality work out of your team, especially if you really foster that creative ability. And I believe it was Google that allows their teams to work on non-work related projects 20% of the time while on work hours. And what they've discovered is that by allowing that freedom and removing the constraints around what has to be delivered and the scope of the project, that when they are brought in to work on other projects, they're more creative. They've also discovered that a huge number of the products and services that they've ended up offering have come out of this free time, where the only management constraint is that you have to get your other work done, which totally makes sense. It's what I do with my staff. I don't care when it gets done, where it gets done, how it gets done, as long as it's done on time and as long as whatever you deliver is what the client asks for. If you want to work at 2:00 in the morning in your pajamas, hey, if that's when you're most creative and that works for you and it doesn't interrupt anything else you're doing, have at her. Don't miss the deadline. That's the only constraint. Don't miss the deadline. Don't go beyond the scope of the project. Or if you want to go beyond the scope of the project, then come and talk to me and let's see why. And then we can present it to the client and see what they have to say. So it was really cool. It was really cool to read this and see that I'm not crazy and that my managers weren't crazy, but the two of us trying to work together, that was a little crazy. So one of the last points that came in here, from here, we got to the very end and it was talking about, again, the intrinsic motivators. And it says, first ask a big question. In 1962, Claire Booth Luce, I hope I'm saying that right, one of the first women to serve in the U.S. Congress, offered some advice to President John F. Kennedy. A great man, she told him, is a sentence. Abraham Lincoln's sentence was, he preserved the Union and freed the slaves. Franklin Roosevelt's was, he lifted us out of a Great Depression and helped us win a world war. Luce feared that Kennedy's attention was so splintered among different priorities that his sentence risked becoming a muddled paragraph. You don't have to be a president of the United States or of your local gardening club to learn from this tale. One way to orient your life toward greater purpose is to think about your sentence. Maybe it's, he raised 4 kids who became happy and healthy adults, or she invented a device that made people's lives easier, or he cared for every person who walked into his office, regardless of whether that person could pay, or she taught 2 generations of children how to read. As you contemplate your purpose, begin with the big question: what's your sentence? So it was really cool. It's a terrific book. I got a lot out of it. It really has me examining my intrinsic and extrinsic motivators. And more specifically today, I had a terrific coaching session with Holly Simmons, who's leading our Making Shift Happen program, and discovered that I really need to get back to those intrinsic motivators, which are, for me, collaboration, problem solving, strategizing, what have you, and making sure that those are a bigger part of my business than some of the other services that I offer. And so if you're struggling a little bit, or you've decided it's time to pivot your business, then taking advantage of resources like Daniel H. Pink's Drive is something that I highly recommend. It was a terrific read, and I'm in Canada, $18.50. I mean, how often can you go to a professional and pay $18.50 to get what must have taken, 200 hours to write and put down? You're never going to get that kind of value. And if you are a person who needs to have a conversation about it, then do yourself a favor and open up to your network that you're using these kinds of tools and talk to them, share the ideas, chew on them a little bit, and see what you get out of it. So that's it for today. Thanks for joining me. My name's Elizabeth Plouffe, and I own MCV Communications. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, and my website's mcvcommunications.ca. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and this inspires you to pick up a book and learn from the experts. And we'll talk to you soon. Thanks. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to Across the Desk. You can follow me on Twitter at MCVComms, Instagram at MCV Communications, or visit mcvcommunications.ca to see where else I'm hiding out.